Okay, everybody, it is 11:02, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today and being part of the ADA Transition Plan for Capitol Campus. Want to do some introductions? My name is Robbie Poche, and I have been a planner here at DES for a little over 2 years now. What you see on the screen is the full team that has been involved in the documentation, assessments, public engagement, and the overall work of the transition plan. I am a white male with brown long hair and a beard and a green shirt. My pronouns are he, him. Just to note, we will be recording today's presentation and it will be uploaded shortly after. Today, we will be reviewing the components of the ADA transition plan, physical ADA barriers, our ADA study, public engagement, the project timeline, and then open it up for Q&A. You can submit any comments or questions in the Q&A during the presentation. For today, we would like to focus on just ADA issues and respect everyone's time that came to be part of this effort. If you have anything that you would like to bring up that is not related to the ADA, please send me an email at robbie.poche@des.wa.gov and I can respond to you. So DES is in the process of creating an ADA transition plan. The purpose of this document is to transition a public agency into full compliance with the Americans with Disability Accessibility Guidelines. A little background on the ADA. The Americans with Disabilities Act is a civil rights law enacted by President Bush in 1990. To give context to our effort, only 3 of the buildings that we assessed were built after this act. We are concerned with Title II of the ADA, which requires state and local governments to ensure that their programs, activities, and services are available to people living with disabilities. So what is an ADA transition plan? At its core, it is a plan for the removal of physical barriers. This is meant to be a living document that will be updated regularly. So what is an ADA barrier? These are physical elements of a building that prevent access for people with disabilities. An example of this is if the public accessible entrance for a building is only accessible by stairs, then the stairs are a physical barrier that blocks someone with a disability from accessing or using our services. So here are a few other examples of physical barriers that we have seen on campus. These are things like parking stalls not meeting a certain code requirement, like not being wide enough, the slope of the space being too severe, or some issue with signage. Another example of a physical barrier is an obstacle protruding into an accessible route. These are physical barriers that are not compliant with ADA standards. The ADA transition plan is comprised of 3 parts: an assessment, public engagement, and the document itself. The assessment portion includes a building and field assessment for DES managed buildings and grounds. The second part, and what we are currently working on, is public engagement. This is all about reaching out to the community and public to receive feedback and lived experiences. Once the public engagement is completed, then we'll begin working on the document itself. This is the actual plan for the removal of barriers. So now we're going to go over the work that we have completed. And we're going to start with the scope. I want to give everybody a clear idea of what we're looking at. We assessed the buildings on Capitol campus, the buildings, a few of the DES managed buildings off of campus, and finally our parks and grounds. This includes Marathon Park, Heritage Park, and the Capitol campus grounds. So just going to give everybody a second to look at this. Our assessment was split into two efforts, one for the buildings and one for the parks and grounds. DES staff assessed the grounds using the ADA checklist for existing facility. This checklist helped us identify accessibility issues in our portfolio so that we can meet our obligations under the ADA. In 2024, you can see us using the checklist to assess our parks and grounds. Here's the team measuring one of our accessible parking stalls to check for code compliance. So we went all around our grounds and parks, including Marathon and Heritage Park, and reviewed several items with the ADA checklist. We focused on accessible parking, accessible routes, and accessible entries. And to give a little bit more of a description to what an accessible route is, these are continuous, unobstructed paths connecting accessible elements and spaces that can be used by a person with a disability. So in a larger sense, this part of the assessment, we reviewed how people get to campus, how they travel to their destination, and how they entered the building. We also reviewed a few other items like ramps and signage for code compliance. The data from this effort was then put into GIS, which is a mapping software. With this tool, we can look at every accessible parking stop, route, entrance, among a few other things, and see what items have physical barriers. You can review the story map in more detail in the link on our website. So that is our assessment of our parks and grounds. The buildings were assessed in 2023 as part of a facility condition assessment. This is a team of engineers and architects assessing DES managed buildings on and off campus. They reviewed overall building condition, seismic issues, and ADA physical barriers. With these two assessments, we have a full data set of our buildings, parks, and grounds. To give an example of something that came up during our facility condition assessment, you can see it on the right. To be code compliant, the handrail shouldn't end at the end of the stair, but it should actually extend 1 foot on the top and bottom of the stair. And that takes us to our public engagement. We're reaching out to the public in 3 main ways: our story map, which I just went over, a survey, and this virtual workshop. The story map is intended to give everyone a more in-depth look at our work detailing our assessment. The survey is the main avenue that we are receiving feedback. It has questions like how often do you visit Capitol Campus, and an opportunity to detail specific ADA barriers that you may have encountered. So far, we've been pretty successful and have received around 90 survey responses. The survey will run until the end of August, so a couple more weeks after this workshop. When writing the document, we will summarize and use the information from both the survey and the virtual workshop. The goal of the public engagement is to inform the public, know your lived experiences, and overall to collaborate with the community. The information that you provide will help us create projects, prioritize those projects, and see if we missed anything in our assessments. Once we have finished the public engagement portion, we will have a full data set to begin work on the document. The actual transition plan document will identify the physical barriers found in our assessments, create and prioritize projects, describe methods of removing those barriers, and provide a schedule for the projects. We will also identify an ADA coordinator. I want to give everybody a sense of our timeline. As stated before, the assessment portions have been completed and we are currently working on the public engagement portion. This will run through the end of August. Starting in the fall, we will begin working on the actual document. Once we have a good draft, we'll upload it back onto our website for another review by the community and other stakeholders. In 2026, we will start implementing and requesting funding for projects as outlined in the transition plan document. In 2027 and onward, we will continue to update the document. To touch a little bit more on future updates, when we update the document, we will update the projects that have been completed or funded, if any new projects are added, or if there's any new information that surfaces from continued public outreach. It is important to keep our work up to date. So that is our work on the ADA transition plan. Would like to open up right now for discussion. The information that we receive will help shape our work. So going to leave it on this slide with our biggest questions. What are we missing? What is your lived experience? And what types of projects are important to you? Please also feel free to fill out the survey or to respond in the Q&A.
Hey, Robbie, I'll jump in and introduce myself. So I'm Rochelle Johnson, a communications consultant with DES, and I'll just help facilitate the questions that we've received. So if you do have any questions, please, or comments, please feel welcome to submit them using that Q&A icon that Robbie mentioned. We do have just a few questions to get us started. So Robbie, first question, why are there ADA barriers on campus?
It's a great question. There's a couple of reasons why we have ADA barriers on campus. Some of them are due to the historic nature of our building. As we went over before, almost all of our buildings were built before the ADA became law. Other barriers come up because of code changes or just sometimes the passage of time, trees growing bigger, creating bumps in pavement, things like that. There's not one point of, or there's not one reason to why we have these physical barriers on campus.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Robbie. Another question is, will all ADA barriers be removed or all issues fixed as part of this work?
So we are going to start to request projects to fix these physical barriers, but all of our projects will be reliant on funding. We think that we have some good strategies to get these projects funded, but it's really what gets funded. Another sort of issue that we will have in the future is about our historic buildings. These are more complicated to fix these physical barriers, and many of them will probably require further study to address.
Great, thank you, Robbie. One other question we have is, will all issues shared from the public engagement survey be fixed?
So with this effort, we are really focused on ADA code compliance. So this is us going to the ADA and the checklist and finding things that are specifically non-code compliant. Once the document is drafted, we can then begin to ask funding for these projects. There is potential to work in projects that are not necessarily ADA non-compliant. I think that signage could go a long way on our campus. So we will be looking at the survey responses to help inform those sort of outside code projects, but we are focused on code compliance with this effort.
Wonderful. Thanks for answering that question, Robbie. We don't have any new questions that have been submitted. So I'll leave it to you how long we want to kind of leave it open in case we have any last minute submissions.
Sure. I am more than free to hang out for the next 5 minutes, but would like to thank everybody for their time. Would like to thank the entire project team for their work on this. This has really been a huge team effort. Would like to thank Rochelle for emceeing our presentation today, and our two interpreters, Stacy and Brenda, for coming hang out with us today. But yeah, as I said, I can hang out for a little bit if anybody would like to add anything to the Q&A.
All right, Robbie, we did get another question. How are these ADA improvements going to be funded?
That is a fantastic question. So today I don't have projects. Want to make sure that I get a complete data set, and that includes public engagement before starting to propose projects. However, thinking ahead, I think a lot of these are going to be implemented as part of the capital budget requests. Uh, don't want to get too in the weeds of what that is, but every year we have the opportunity to ask for funding for several projects. These are things like elevator modernizations or building a new building, looking at creating a minor works list or minor works program just for ADA issues. I think this is going to be our primary way to tackle these projects. But as we develop the plan, going to also look at alternate sources of funding for maybe some of these smaller projects or see what opportunities are around.
Great, thanks for that, Robbie. And we got another question. Will there be a space to report ADA materials that need maintenance, such as rails with rust or obstacles in the path, etc.?
That is a great question. The main avenue that we're looking for this feedback is in our survey. There is a space in the survey that you can detail any ADA issues that you have encountered. Also, feel free to reach me at robbie.poche@des.wa.gov in a direct email if you feel like this is maybe something that would take a little bit more space than on a survey. We are closing the survey at the end of August to begin working on the actual transition plan, but in the future, we will reopen up public engagement to allow for continued responses about our campus. Great question.
Thanks for that, Robbie. And thank you for those who are submitting questions. It's great to see your interest and give us an opportunity to address them.
Right. If that is the end of the questions, again, feel free to fill out a survey or contact me directly. But I think that the meeting is done. Thank you, everyone, for your time and for joining us today. Have a good day.